Okay, so listen up. So the important thing as I go through this video, please make sure everything I demonstrate on the calculator you practice yourself. And then there are a few things I got to assume you're already familiar with. But let's just get into the video and see if it all makes sense to you. So first of all, if we look at this problem 9 you gave me, notice it's a right triangle. Whenever you're given a right triangle, there are two things you can always do. You can always do Pythagorean theorem, and you can always do SOHCAHTOA, right? Basic baby trigonometry. And I hope you know Pythagorean theorem well. A squared plus b squared is c squared. And you know your sine, cosine, and tangent. All right? So that being said, I already know that angle C here is 90 degrees. I know that angle B here is 62 degrees. How do I find A is I'm simply going to take 90 minus 62 because remember in a right triangle, these two other acute angles as we call them always add up to 90 because remember all three angles add up to 180. So if you take away the 90, you're left with 90 for the other two angles, right? So that's where we would take our calculator and we do 90 minus 62 and we would get 28. So we now already know all the angles, A, B, and C. Now we're told right here, let's clean this up a little bit. We're told right here that our side AC is 22.6. So what I'm going to do is find BC over here. I'm going to call it little x here. All right. And notice that if I use angle A, which we know is 28 degrees, see how x is opposite of 28 degrees. And this 22.6 we say is adjacent. It's right next to the 28 degrees. Now, what uses O and A is tangent, right? That's what TOA tells us. So I know that the tangent of 28 degrees is the opposite over the 22.6, right? Opposite over adjacent. Now, solving for x here, all I need to do is times by 22.6. So x is going to be 22.6 times the tangent of 28. So with my calculator, I'm going to take 22.6 times the tangent of 28, and I'm going to get 12.0166. Now your teacher probably wants you at least keep two decimal places. So let's say for that side BC there, we know it's 12.02, let's say. But talk to your teacher about how many decimal places he or she wants. So that right there is 12.02 if I round it off. Now what? Well, once I know two of the sides, the third side, AB, this is my hypotenuse, is simply Pythagorean theorem. So you'll notice I'm just going to go A squared plus B squared. I'm going to take this total, that's C squared, and then I just take the square root of that C squared, and this is my missing side, 25.6, let's say. And that's it. So what should you do in a problem like this? You should know that every triangle adds up to 180. That means in a right triangle, the two small angles add up to 90. You should know your SOHCAHTOA. You got to know, in this case, we use tangent, opposite over adjacent. You also need to make sure, once you know two sides, just go ahead and use Pythagorean theorem to find the third side. All right, you gave me one more of these type, number 10 here. So we're going to approach it the same way. It's going to be a little different because we have different information. But notice we know that AC is 14.3. Notice they gave us the hypotenuse, AB is 16. So how can I find the third missing side over here? I'm going to call it little x, but you can call it just BC. I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. I know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So to find x squared, I'm just going to take this minus this, right? So using our calculator, I'm going to take 16 squared minus the 14.3 squared. So x squared, 51.51. To find the missing side, all I need to do is square root both sides. So when I square root, I get 7.177. So I now know all the missing sides. 7.177, right? So now what? Well, we know angle C is 90. Let's put that in there. Now we just have to decide, do we want to find angle A or B? Why don't we find angle A right here? Notice how 14.3 is adjacent to it, and the 16 again is the hypotenuse. What uses AH? Well, according to SOHCAHTOA, cosine is adjacent hypotenuse. So I know that the cosine of A has to be 14.3 over 16. So let's divide that with a calculator. 14.3 divided by 16 is this, 0.89375. And if that equals the cosine of A, I can find A here by doing cosine inverse on both sides. So A is going to equal the cosine inverse of that. So I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to press shift cosine or second cosine to get cosine inverse. And I'm going to do the cosine inverse of this. And you need to practice yourself now. You should get 26.65. So now we know that angle, what was it? Angle A is 26.65, right? How do I find the third missing angle B? Is I know if I do 90 minus angle A, I should get the missing angle B. So I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to go 90 minus 26.65, and there's my missing angle, 63.35. So 63.35 degrees. So that's it. So every triangle adds up to 180. That means every right triangle, the two smaller angles add up to 90. Every right triangle, you can always do Pythagorean theorem. That's how we found the missing side, 7.177, right? What else should we know is SOHCAHTOA. And in our case, we use cosine with angle A to find angle A first. We could have found angle B using sine, okay? And then we would have minus 90 to find angle A instead. But you got to know all of this. SOHCAHTOA, Pythagorean theorem. Triangles always add up to 180, etc. So hopefully this video helps. And hopefully I'll see you around. It was good seeing you this morning.